what do you think schools can do to have a higher retention of teachers?
Yeah, I mean, one, they have to set a goal around it. Like you have to have actually acknowledge that there's an issue with retention. You have to look at like what's all of the things that impact retention. One of the best ways to do that is ask. Like what would get you to stay? What should I start? What should I stop? What should I continue doing that would make you feel more comfortable? How do I get you invested in this vision and the work, deeper? Can we make sure that what we're doing is informed by you? Making sure that they're listening to, educators, like being, a lot of times, I'm always curious about this, that people think that growing up black in America is profoundly different being black in schools. And it's always fascinating to me that you have, particularly white people who think, well, everybody in the school is just different. And, all the, biases and racism and all that stuff just magically sheds out of us once we get hired, despite the fact that I've never been around black people, I've never been around black children or this many black people, right? Now, I mean, I'm either a supervisor, a colleague, any of that, like just this fundamental misconception that you are no longer harboring racist tendencies because you work with black children. That is overseers work with black people, plantation owners work with black people. Folk, what I mean? So there's been a lot you're not the first. And yes, you may have a different thinking and philosophy, but it doesn't mean that implicit biases and often explicit biases don't manifest themselves in different ways. So I think some of it is acknowledging that and working on it, confronting it and working on it. I often talk about one of the biggest ways to help retain black and Latino teachers is to hire better white people, find better ways to professionally develop white people. That will have a colossal impact on the current generation of teachers who are colleagues and that's not even a microaggression, that was macro. That's at the macro level, right? Like that's not implicit bias, you were explicitly racist just now in that comment, right? And so if we develop white folks better, if we hire better folks, and this is not just the schools, right? Teacher colleges, you have to do better. Like you are training people and you're like, oh, you know what? Yeah, we have no, responsibility or accountability for who's produced or who we hand this teacher licensure to. We're like, oh, but you do, right? And so those are some of just a couple examples of how things can be different. Future generation, because there are future black teachers sitting in classrooms right now. What is their experience? Chris Emden talks about some of them not going to want to become teachers because they're going to think it's returning to the scene of a crime. Like, why would I come back to the source of my frustration, the source of my oppression, right? And as much as folks want to say, oh yeah, black people are traumatized because of their homes and their neighborhoods, well, there's some trauma there in some of our homes and communities. There's also a lot of trauma in our schools. And we don't want to talk about the trauma inflicted on schools. Some parents, some of these black parents send their kids actually pretty whole to school. It's the 13 years in schools, a half a year of being in school, that sucks them dry, that traumatizes them, that disengages them, pushes them to be disengaged, right? Like we talk about, is it a dropout or is it a push out? Like some of it is just an act of sanity. If you're oppressed at that level, why would you stay? Right? Like at some level to protect yourself, you're gonna say I'm opting out. I'm gonna either shut down, disengage because this is so hostile, I'm just gonna disengage. Right? And even if I'm physically here, I've disengaged because I've got so many scars in this process that it's not worth my mental health to keep trying to engage a system and people who obviously don't love me, who obviously don't even care for me, right? And so if young children start developing that, understanding that, they're more intuitive than we want to give them credit for. And the research shows that as young as 3 and 4-year-olds in preschool start experiencing racial biases of their teachers. How long are they just supposed to grin and bear it? And so that's my concern. So you want to retain, one, understand that there are things, there are institutional as well as personal that need to be addressed. I mean, The biggest criticism of academics is because, they like to talk. They like to philosophize. So they can have a conference and a talk and write white papers about the lack of black teachers, till they retire, right? Like, a lot of academics will talk you to death, right? And so that's part of that's just what it is. It's less of a emphasis on action. It's more or less like, just think. You come to the academia to think, right? And so like that kind of removal from the urgency of now, the urgency of action is problematic. Because this is not something new, So this is something that they've known a long time. This new study that, Dr. Constance Lindsay at UNC and some researchers at Johns Hopkins University, they were looking at the long term. Short term, they've known about this for a long time. They know if a black student, same race teachers, particularly black students, particularly black boys, one, because black children are more sensitive to the teacher's expectations than white children, right? Because they are constant. And we're talking about like the psyche and how they've been just bombarded with messages that you're less than. Then this authority figure, usually the one that they spend the most time outside of their own family is the teacher. And so they're extremely sensitive to the teacher's expectations, right? But they've known the short term that, same race teacher, black child will have more access to gifted and honors classes. They'll feel a higher sense of belongingness. They'll be less likely to be suspended, referred to disciplinary measures, or expelled, have higher attendance, higher test scores, higher grades. All of that has been known, right? But folks aren't doing it. People talk about it because people like to talk. People like to philosophize, right? And so this long-term piece where by third grade, black child, 39% less likely to drop out. 39%, so almost 40% less likely to drop out. You have two, you are 32% more likely to go to college. Those two numbers is not, for some reason, like that still hasn't warranted the amount of action. We see some traction now. There people are trying to move, but this came out a little while ago, right? And the short term, again, people have known that for a long time. So when you look at the cities, SHOT report comes out, every year talking about the dropout rate and the graduation rates, right? The college readiness rates, the amount of black kids who start in 9th grade and who end up graduating from college. Those numbers are dismal. You could fit them in this classroom. Philadelphia, as large as this city is, right? Like you can fit them in this classroom. And so that's extremely problematic. And so we need academia to not only talk about it, but say, here's how we are fundamentally changing our teacher colleges. How to recruit and retain students. How do we incent it so that people are understanding like, hey, yes, I want to teach, and here's how I'm going to be able to support it in navigating this road, right? College is still expensive. Costs are continuing to rise. When we talk about like the poverty level of a lot of people of color, first generation college goers, this is a whole new bill that your family hasn't even experienced before, right? So you're already just like treading water. Now you got this other bill of books and transportation and fees and food and meal plans. All of this stuff is new, right? And so then, so we need teacher colleges to, one, make sure that they are recruiting and retaining, but also offer scholarships, right? Like say, like, show me what's important to you. Show me the studies that you respect and invest in the results. When people act or choose to act in a certain way, like I'm at the age now where I don't just assume that they don't know better. It's often what I found is it's a choice and their priorities are different. They just have different priorities. Like, so 40% less likely to drop out, like that's great. It's not a priority. Right? And they're like, what, y'all don't live in my neighborhood. I don't have to see y'all. I get paid to think about y'all and talk about you and write about you and study you, but it doesn't touch me personally. And so as soon as you don't have that connection between, the connection between teacher and students and the classroom, this idea of teaching and learning, it's a sacred, ancient one, right? There's a connection. And if you don't believe that your socio and political future is connected in some kind of way between this teacher and student relationship, the teacher and community relationship, then you're going to have a problem. You're not going to approach it the same way that somebody who does. And I think you're talking about like, what's the difference? Like, I entered saying like, you know what? I am you and you are me. I'm going to be successful because of your success. You're going to be successful because of my success. And that's how I built the community in my classroom as a teacher. That's what we were all like, you know, surrounded around. And that's what was driving. That was our North Star. And if you come with that, so I brought a sense of urgency, but also brought a deep love and affection. Like, yo, y'all are my people. Like, we have to be successful. You have to be literate. You have to be a problem solver, right? But if I come in and just, you know, well, this is a job, I like you, but I'm still gonna be successful even if you're not, right? You know, when it talked about with the 8 black hands, you know, we go around the country and, you know, and we're talking in every venue that we've been in, whether it was Oakland, whether it was Texas, whether it was Las Vegas, whether it was New Orleans, Minnesota, everywhere we go, we can ask them, who's heard, I don't care whether you learn or not, I get paid anyway. Yeah. Every hand rises up. Why is that? And where are you hearing this? Oh, in school? My teacher? Like, what? I wish my kid's teacher would say something like that. Like, you don't deserve to teach them if that's your mindset. And we have a lot of people who are leading schools and classrooms who don't deserve to be in front of our children, don't deserve that honor. But they're there.
Well, let me hear you say, Mount